good morning, good morning. How is everybody today? Sorry. I just had breakfast. I have an oat. Okay, I got it out. An oat from my bread stuck in my tooth. We are on part 71 of the Phil Spector trial. Good morning, Nancy. Good morning, Judy. How is everybody today? I hope you guys had a nice evening yesterday. Let's see what Judy has for us. Oh, before we get started, I just want to ask all of you to please pray for my cousin. She is in surgery right now. Back surgery. She's already had one. Well, she's had more than one because she's had procedures on her back before. She's had the thing I wanted. What's it called? The neurostimulator. She had that. It helped, but it didn't work enough. Then they did a fusion of part of her spine. Now they're doing a fusion of another part of her spine. Her insurance company denied it at first, I guess, because she's already had so many things done to her back. And she's been to the emergency room a couple times because she was in so much pain. And of course, when you go to the emergency room for pain, especially if you have fibromyalgia, they just treat you as drug seeking. So they didn't really do anything for her. That's why I don't go to the emergency room anymore for pain, because I know they're not going to do anything for me. But she was in so much pain, she went because she was at the end of her rope. And her top of her legs, like her thigh area, started going numb. So her insurance company finally said yes. And so they kind of rushed her into surgery. She texted me yesterday and said, or no, she texted me Monday and said, they're doing surgery on Wednesday. So she'll be in the hospital for 2 days. So if you could please remember her in prayer, I would appreciate it. And she's all excited now. She's like, yay, they're going to fix my back and I can go do roller coasters again. She's just like me. Our moms were sisters. They were the two oldest sisters, and we're like sisters. We're health-wise, except for the cancer. She didn't have cancer, but health-wise and theme park-wise, we're best friends. We're like sisters. So she's like, I can't wait. You're going to fix my back and I can go ride roller coasters again. Okay, let's see. Judy. Trial 1 jury told the judge that his special instruction number 3 was the problem in deliberations. Instruction 3, quote, it is the prosecution's contention that the act committed by the defendant that caused the death of Ms. Clarkson was to point a gun at her, which resulted in that gun entering her mouth while in Mr. Spector's hand. The prosecution bears the burden of proving that defendant Spector committed that act. If you do not find that the prosecution has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed that act, you must return a verdict of not guilty. Are you kidding me? That's why it was a hung jury? Okay, which part did they have a problem with? That if he pointed a gun at her, it ended up in her mouth, because she didn't grab the gun from him while he was pointing at her and stick it in her own mouth. So did they not believe that he pointed a gun at her at all? They must. Ugh. But with that, oh my God, that didn't even make sense. Because with all the pattern of behavior that they showed, I mean, they put one woman after woman after woman on the stand showing a pattern of behavior that's what he does. I just, that's just weird. Congratulations, Nancy. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. I did it. I did it twice, actually. Don't do that. Quit for good and don't start back smoking. Quit for good. I started back because I started dating a smoker and we both quit. So, yeah. Don't do what I did. Hey Carla, good morning. Hey other Carla, good morning. Who else is here? Terry. Hey Terry. Yeah, my husband. I got the weirdest comment. If he pointed, yeah, that's my point. Entering the mouth. What did she do? Take the gun and stick it in her own mouth? If he was pointing the gun at her, that's crazy. Jeez. I got the weirdest reply on a video. And it's not the first time I've had that kind of reply. And I don't even remember it. I don't understand it. It was something about some kind of wallet and how do I transfer something to something. I have the seeds and then a bunch of code words. And it says, how do I transfer? And I just replied, no idea. This is the second time I've gotten a comment like that. Is that some kind of scam or something? Let me see if I can pull it up. I'll read to you exactly what it says. Like I said, it's the second time I've gotten a comment like that. Like, I almost didn't even want to reply to it because it sounds like a scammy thing, but it's a YouTube comment. So I don't know how they can scam through a YouTube comment. It was on a Karen Reed video. Okay, it says, appreciate the detailed breakdown. A bit off topic, but I wanted to ask. I have a SafePal wallet with USDT And I have the seed phrase. Wonder, obey, dial, dash, soon, tank, spike, scout, region, undo, zero, such. How can I transfer them to Binance? What the heck is that? I'm not doing anything. There was nothing to click on. It was just a comment on a video. I don't know what it is. No idea. I just said no idea. That's exactly what I responded. No idea. Because I have no idea what that means. And I got a long time ago, I got a comment like that on a video. It wasn't the same exact words, but it was similar. How is that a scam, though? Because there's nothing to click on or anything. It's just a comment on a video. I thought scam too. That's why I'm asking you guys about it. But how are they going to scam me with just a comment on a video? I don't understand. Well, anyway. Don't respond at all? Just no, I just responded no idea. I should, okay. I thought about deleting it. I just didn't because I didn't know. Like, okay. They forgot to post the scam link. Okay. That's why I was like, how is it a scam? There's nothing to click on or anything. It doesn't even make sense. Because usually if they're going to scam you, there's a link involved. That's why I was like, what in the heck is this? Okay, we are. So today, the Karen Reed trial is a half day. So we're going to finish. I forgot his name. Stuart James. That's an easy name to remember. I don't know why I keep forgetting it. Stuart James, the blood pattern expert. We're going to finish his testimony. It's going to be a little over an hour, and then we're going to go to Karen Reed. So we're not going to miss anything on Karen Reed because we can go over. And, excuse me, there's motions to read too, which if they don't cover them, she might cover them before they bring the jury in, or if she doesn't, she might go over them after, or she might not do them at all. And if she doesn't do them at all, then we'll read them together.
Now, we discussed the stain, we were discussing 19C. We have a 19C.
I missed something? This caused 3 days of hearings on whether to revise the instruction. Oh, okay. So there was a revision on the instruction for the second trial? Judge Fiddler revised the instruction to committed an act with a firearm that caused the death of Lana Clarkson. Oh, okay. That makes much more sense. And then they got their conviction in the second trial. Yes, that's much clearer. This caused 3 days of hearings on whether to revise the instruction. Judge Fiddler revised the instruction to, quote, committed an act with a firearm that caused the death of Lana Clarkson, unquote. Yes, that is much clearer than it is the prosecution's contention that the act committed by the defendant that caused the death of Miss Clarkson was to point a gun at her, which resulted in that gun entering her mouth while in Mr. Spector's hand. Yes, that is much clearer. See, if they'd done that in the first place, there wouldn't have had to be another trial. Oh, wait. Trial 1? But there was still a hung jury? So they came, how many times were they deadlocked? Like, how many times did they come out? So they came out and told the judge they were deadlocked? Because of that, and so then they had hearings to revise the jury instructions during deliberations? I don't think I've ever seen that happen before. So they changed a jury instruction during deliberations. And they still had a hung jury? That's bizarre. Because that is much simpler and much more obvious. Committed an act with a firearm that caused the death of Lana Clarkson. That's much simpler. So the first time they were deadlocked, first time vote was 7-5 for conviction, and second time was 10-2 for conviction. Weird. So they came out and they're like, we're having problems with this one part of jury instructions. And then they had a hearing to change it, and they changed it. And they went 7-4 to 10-4. But there were still people that didn't think he was guilty. Wow. That's bizarre. I don't think I've ever seen a trial. I don't think I've ever seen a trial where they've changed a jury instruction during deliberations. Well, I guess we're going to see it this time. I hope we get to see the hearing and everything about that. That's going to be interesting to watch. And they still hung. That's weird.
See close up, Jen. F10, Your Honor?
Yes.
F10? Okay, and is this what you meant by the fact that it's got a longer shape than wide?
Yeah, that's what I mean. And besides, that stain is somewhat irregular, so I'm not sure if it was taken across at what particular angle, but it was measured to be 2 millimeters.
Millimeter, again, would not be a sub-millimeter spatter, correct?
No.
And then if we can go back to the main view of the jacket again, Jennifer, that would be V9. Okay, and there's one more stain that was tested for DNA on the left side of the jacket, that's 19E on the bottom. There we go. I'd like to focus your attention now on 19E. Now, this stain was tested for DNA?
Yes, according to the reports.
Okay, and if we have a little better picture of that area down there, can we go to picture 19E, Jennifer?
A golden cut on it. It's green.
Okay. 19E. And I think I'll be a G to the 10th?
Yes.
a snappy grabber.
Do you have the 1980 picture?
I need more coffee. Clearly, he was a snazzy driver. He was a snazzy dresser.
Your Honor, I have to use the Elmo on this one also.
All right. Is that?
Yes, that's it. She's got it. She's got it. Back one, Jen. All right. All right, let me just talk about this for a second. The 19E, the DNA, that's a 1 millimeter spatter, correct?
Yes,
Right?
that's how it was measured.
Okay, and again, that would not be characterized as a sub-millimeter spatter, correct?
No, sub-millimeter by its definition is less than a millimeter.
Okay. And the three alleged stains around there, go back to the whole picture, Jennifer, 27, 28, and 29. They were not tested for DNA to even see whether they were blood, correct?
Well, they weren't tested for DNA, that's correct.
Okay. And then one other stain that we'd like to talk about on the front of the jacket that was measured by Mr. Renteria. And if we can go back to the view of the jacket on B9. Okay. In the middle, near the left breastbone, stain 16. I talked about that for the moment. That was also measured as being 1 millimeter in diameter? Okay. And again, that would not be the sub-millimeter particles that we were speaking of earlier.
Correct.
Okay. And 1 millimeter and 2 millimeter particles are fairly larger particles in the bloodstain spatter community, correct?
Well, I wouldn't characterize them as large, but in terms of spatter, they're, spatter in general goes from sub-millimeter, 100 millimeter in diameter, up to about 3. It's in the middle to high range of spatter size.
Okay. And middle to high range, did you say?
Sorry?
Middle to high range, did you say?
Yeah, if we take, hundreds of millimeter size up to tenth to 2/10 to 3/10, the 2 to 3 becomes sort of the middle to upper range.
Okay. And spatter that's 5/10 of a millimeter or less, what would that be?
It's sub-millimeter, basically. There aren't too many of us in bloodstain pattern analysis that go to the extent to do this discrete type. We call it impact spatter if in that.
Well, that's what you'd explain to the jury, that you decide whether it's impact spatter or not impact spatter, correct?
Right. You look at the overall pattern and you take measurements of the smallest ones perhaps, and then the largest ones, and then you can safely state that the overall pattern is in a range of, let's say, 2/10 of a millimeter.
A stain that you get from an initial spattering event such as gunshot, correct?
Correct.
And did you see what has been called anything like misting on this jacket?
Not that I would classify as misting, no.
Did you see anything that you classify as misting on the right or the left sleeves of this jacket?
Not that I would categorize as misting, no.
Okay. Does this jacket on its right or left sleeve have the necessary distribution or location of spatter to support the jacket being in the position up to somebody's mouth?
No, the bloodstain evidence in this case on that jacket does not allow that conclusion to be drawn.
And does it support on the left side of the cuff the position of somebody putting their hand up to somebody's mouth and shooting a gun?
No, my answer would be the same. It does not support that conclusion at all.
Just a quick summary of what we discussed then. You cannot place the decedent's head to the right or to the left based on the spatter from the evidence that you looked at, correct?
Your Honor, I just want to object if this is a summary. It's
I agree.
unnecessary.
It's been asked and answered.
Okay. And then one final question. Is there any scientific evidence in the blood spatter area to support these two?
No, the bloodstain evidence, the bloodstain evidence is not there. So we're left with that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to pick up on that last point, your last answer to that, to Ms. Kinney-Bodden's last question was the bloodstain evidence is simply not there. You're saying that you can't draw a conclusion by what's not there. You're not saying that, in fact, that jacket was not in the vicinity of the gunshot wound.
I'm just saying that my same answer, that the bloodstain evidence does not permit that conclusion. The absence of evidence is another issue, but I can only provide you with data from bloodstains that are there.
Okay, and of course, your answer to that question, Mr. James, was limited to Mrs. Kinney-Bodden's question about what was on the cuffs or the sleeves, correct?
Yes, we're talking about the blood on the cuffs does not support that conclusion.
Okay, of course, there is no way to approximate exactly where in a crime scene environment where blood is going to fly or not fly. 2007 or even back 2004, you cannot recreate the exact flow of each particulate matter of blood droplets through the air, correct?
Well, of course not.
Okay.
I mean, it's a random event. Every case is different.
But that's, you know what, that's an incredibly eloquent way of saying it. It's a random event. In other words, although you can recreate certain blood spattering or bloodletting events, shooting through sponges, covering the sponge with clothing, even shooting some animals, I guess, as distasteful as that might be, that will not, each one of those cases, even experimentally, will result in a random distribution of blood to a certain degree. In other words, the droplets cannot be approximated to the millimeter, correct? Where they're going to land and where they're going to go.
Right. I mean, you have issues even in experimentation as to the volume of blood that you're applying to the sponge.
Sure.
And how accurate is your shooting through the sponge. I've had students, shoot through a bloody sponge and somehow manage to miss the blood on it. And so they get no spatter. What's wrong here, Well,
right.
Try aiming a little better, that sort of thing.
So in other words, I think the long and short of what you're saying is a criminalist, someone who's studied in this particular science, this forensic science, has to take each case and the fact pattern that's laid before him or her in each case into consideration when attempting either a reconstruction or coming to any conclusion about a particular event, correct?
In general, yes.
Okay. Give me just a quick second, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. James. Let me get my notes together. By the way, while I'm thinking about this, as I review a couple of things, I might jump around a little bit, and I apologize. The term misting, you said you would not qualify what you found on the jacket or what you examined on the jacket to be a misting pattern, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that is a terminology difference that you have with some other folks in the field. In other words, what you might call misting, somebody else might call aerosol type, somebody else might call high velocity spatter, somebody else might call impact spatter, correct?
Yes, in fact, I think in the Kish Sutton James book, which we've been referring to, the latest bloodstain book, I think in fact we do say mist-like or aerosol. I mean, it's a common term. The problem is, as you're pointing out correctly, is that there's a disparity in terminology, and that's one reason that, I happen to get chosen to be put on the terminology committee of Swigstein with 5 other people, including Paulette Sutton, to get this, kind of worked out. And that's one of our endeavors in Swigstein.
Sure, and we hope you get there. I guess the point when you rolled your eyes.
Well, it's been 4 years we've been trying, we're not there yet. But
All right.
we will get there.
Fair enough. One of the important things for a criminalist to do, for any forensic scientist to do, to make sure that we don't have a disparity among terminologies, for instance, is to go ahead and document, and photograph, and write down the particular characteristics of a stain that's observed, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that way, if it's documented and the evidence is preserved, and then it's photographed on top of being preserved and documented, it gives other people, other forensic scientists and folks in the community, an opportunity to go back and apply whatever terminology they think is appropriate, correct?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, so for instance, if one analyst were to call what was on the jacket, in his or her opinion, a misting pattern, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, so long as everybody agrees that this is the jacket or this is the slip dress, and here's the evidence that's on it. I mean, we can call it potatoes or potatoes, I suppose, and as long as the evidence is there, it is what it is, sort of, correct?
Well, the only problem with that statement is that misting in itself, when people say misting, they automatically are referring to it as gunshot spatter.
Okay.
And it may not be the case. So that's why, currently we're trying to get away from that and say impact spatter in a certain category, whether it be impact spatter or expiratory blood or satellite spatter or beating spatter. We make it more case-driven.
Okay.
Because misting, everyone says, oh boy, gunshot. And if the stains are not truly what I consider a misting size, then you may not be dealing with gunshot at all.
Sure, but I guess what I'm getting at, Mr. James, is that the terminology applied in no way hindered your ability to review the evidence on your own independently, correct?
Oh, no, the only hindrance we had, and I think I brought it to the jury's attention and everybody here, is that the photographs of some of the items were better than the actual items because of the time lapse in the removal of stains.
Sure.
So the documentation was fine.
All right, good. Very briefly, Mrs. Kinney Bodden asked you about an experiment that I think one of your professors actually conducted, dealing with a propeller device, very quickly spinning fan or propeller blade, wherein a pipette was used to drop some blood into it. That propeller blade then came in contact with the blood, the human blood. The blood was sent a particular direction, and then some measurements were made about that, correct?
Yes, that's what was the infernal machine. Yes.
Okay. I want to make sure I'm clear about this. In no way, and several photographs were shown, I think it was defense H to the 9th and I to the 9th were shown, showing spatter that was 6 inches away and then spatter that was a foot away. That was in no way, Mr. James, an attempt by you to approximate for this jury what they should expect to see if they were looking at back spatter, for instance, from an intraoral gunshot, correct?
Correct, but I just want to correct you. We use 1 foot and 6 foot, not 6 inches and 1.
That's my mistake. I knew that.
Their notes will get confused on that.
Sorry about that. That was my fault.
No, it's a minor point, I guess, but at any rate, no. This is only to demonstrate how far droplet sizes can go, and to show students that the larger droplets will travel further, and especially with a horizontal force, that they will go a considerable distance.
Sure. And of course, that horizontal force was a fan blade spinning.
Yeah, we're not trying, I think I mentioned to the jury that we're not trying to replicate the gunshot backspatter at all.
Okay, so that, other than just kind of the example of showing how folks are taught this particular science or this type of science, that had no relevance to a particular backspatter event that you're testifying about.
No, only to show the relevance of gravity and air resistance affecting how far droplets will go, and then the force, of course, being more than just those two, having the horizontal force as well.
All right, and that horizontal force in that particular experiment, because we're dealing with a fan blade, also included the movement of some air, columnized air, if you will.
Well, to a certain extent. I
Okay.
mean, actually, it was a side of the fan that, it was a side of the blades that were going out. The main force of the fan was actually, going forward.
Sure.
But not with the blood.
And at the end of the day, the students were taught through that experiment, and the professor succeeded in showing that larger droplets with larger mass can travel through air further than smaller droplets with smaller mass.
Yes, and that experiment, it was actually a demonstration. We all didn't do it individually.
Okay.
But that was the point of it all.
Okay. You indicated that, I think, in answering one of Mrs. Kinney-Bodden's questions about that particular demonstration, if you will, that there is a wide, yourself, with some law enforcement experience and being a forensic scientist yourself, a wide variation of distances that you see that you see blood droplets traveling at a particular crime scene, correct?
There's quite a variation. I mean, overall, and also, I believe we're just talking about gunshot cases, but
Sure, yes.
certainly beatings and some other events can produce some pretty, dramatic distances.
You've seen distances, for instance, that are limited. I mean, you might walk in a particular crime scene and realize what the facts are. They involve a gunshot wound, and yet there's no backspatter. I mean, that's not uncommon, correct?
No, backspatter is probably more than people realize is not present. The factors, I'm sorry.
No, please, go ahead.
To elaborate just a bit, the factors are the location of the wound. For example, head wounds are more likely to produce backspatter, especially if they're close range, the size of the caliber of the weapon, the presence of hair or other intermediate objects, clothing. McDonald always made a case of the guy wearing a hat, and the spatter was on the inside of the hat and not elsewhere.
Right.
Those are all examples of ways that it can be diminished.
Sure. So there are circumstances that a forensic scientist has to take into consideration in each individual case before assigning significance to the existence or non-existence of backspatter and blood spatter in general, correct?
Yes.
For instance, like you said, use your example, shooting into someone's head, for instance, a head wound. If there's a significant amount of hair, that might impede backspatter from even going past the hairline, correct?
Right, it may be entirely absent due to that factor.
Okay, so if someone's wearing a hat, like you said, it may just be confined to the area of the hat because that's sort of a closed environment, correct?
Yes.
All right, if someone's wearing clothing and it's that's okay. If someone's wearing clothing, a suit, and I'm wearing several layers with the jacket, the tie, the shirt, the t-shirt, etc., a wound that I suffer to the chest might very well, as a matter of fact, you'd probably expect it to be somewhat confined, the backspatter, if it exists at all, to be confined under my clothes, for instance.
Yes, well, frankly, in the absence of a shotgun wound, backspatter in chest wounds is very rarely seen.
Okay. So more times than not, in gunshot events, backspatter is not seen. It's not prevalent rather than the alternative, correct?
That's been my experience and others in researching this issue. Yes.
So certainly it goes. It's kind of a logical extension of that when you go to a crime scene, if there is backspatter, you have to take that spatter pattern for what it is and not try to unduly expound on it and find and ask, what isn't there, for instance? What would we expect to find? You take it as it comes to you, correct?
Well, you take the evidence at the scene as it comes. I mean, as far as what you expect to see, it depends on the totality of the scene. Okay? If there is spatter produced, then you might want to travel into what I would expect to see, or an analyst would expect to see. But generally speaking, we don't like to opine about bloodstains that aren't there, if you see what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's pretty well covered in our book as well.
Sure, and as one of the quotes that you use is something that we've heard in here several times, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, for instance.
Yeah, it depends how you use that particular statement, but it's got a lot of applicability. That's one that Paul Kish wrote with Herb McDonald, and it was actually a letter to the editor, I believe, in I think the Journal of Identification several years ago.
Let me get back to this in just a second. I apologize again. I'm trying to go in some order so that we can kind of walk through this logically. A couple of points that Mrs. Kinney-Gladden made I'd like to touch upon. She brought up the idea of, or actually she asked you about it and you brought it up, the idea of satellite spatter, and I'd like to visit with you for a second about that. Satellite spatter is different than back spatter insofar as the mechanism that causes it, correct?
Yes, it's a different mechanism that can produce small stains.
Okay. Back spatter, as we've all learned through the course of this trial, is a product of a gunshot. And let's talk about gunshots. It's a product of a gunshot wound where the spatter actually goes the opposite direction of the trajectory of the bullet, correct?
Yeah, we're talking about gunshots.
Yes, talking about gunshots only. We'll limit our discussion to that for right now. Conversely, satellite spatter is something, if I understand you correctly and I looked at your diagram correctly, it's something where if I have a bleeding hand and I'm dripping onto this table, the satellite spatter that you're talking about would be the result of blood dripping into either on the surface itself, say one drop onto a clean surface and then spattering out, or blood dripping into blood consistently as the blood pools, blood keeps dripping into it, and it creates little splashes, if you will, correct?
Well, I don't call it splashes, it's actually, spattered blood. Yes.
Okay, and what I meant by that was the... Oh, you've done it, you do have it. Let's see if I can recall which... I believe this was M to the 9th.
I only list them, I don't list them by what they are. Just M to the 9th is a diagram, I can tell you that.
That would be...
That's it. Okay. I don't further describe it in my notes.
Okay, I think, does that look like the same diagram?
It is, it's from the same book.
Okay.
Yes.
And I didn't mean to insult your intelligence by calling it splashing, I just don't know anything.
A splash of blood involves a larger volume.
Okay.
That's all.
So this small spattering event, there are certain physical properties to this type of satellite spatter, I assume, correct?
Physical properties?
Physical properties, or physical laws that govern it. In other words, for instance, something I think I've learned through the course of studying this stuff is that the vertical height of any spattered blood from a satellite spatter will never exceed or even reach the height of the source of blood to where the spattering event takes place. That's a mouthful, but I think I got that right. Is that correct?
I think generally speaking, only in that if you're dripping blood into blood at a height of about 6 inches,
Yes.
you won't get any satellite spatter. And the reason for that is that the droplets of blood that are falling need to reach a higher velocity in order to spatter. So at 6 inches down, there isn't enough time nor distance for that to occur. In fact, you can do that. You can just take a pipette of blood and squeeze it one drop at a time, 6 inches above any surface, basically.
Right.
And you'll just see the pool accumulate with nothing around it.
Okay, so in other words...
So it's got to be a higher level in that regard, yes.
And I guess from a physics standpoint, it's because there hasn't been enough time to reach the energy level required to actually break that puddle into smaller droplets like we see from the diagram.
Yes, and I think conversely, also, I should say, although I don't think 6 inches would be the minimum, dropping blood on a rough surface would probably break the surface tension even at that distance, give you some spatter.
Okay. My first question was, and thank you for that explanation. My first question is, let's take it higher than 6 inches, and let's say it's, let's say 6 feet. We're dropping blood into blood at 6 feet. The point is the spatter that you get from that blood into blood mechanism is not going to splash or spatter back up 6 feet, correct?
No, well, first of all, your vertical perspective would probably be limited to about 12 inches.
Okay, that was my question.
That was, I think Paul Kish did some research on that and presented a paper at the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, which I think we've mentioned in the book.
Okay.
All right. But the horizontal perspective is probably it is much wider. It's probably, if you took a diameter of, with the parent stain being in the center, it'd probably be about 3 feet wide, because we use large cardboard. We use large cardboards for that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So the point is, if you're dropping blood into blood, about the most you're going to get, if it's on the ground, for instance, is maybe a spatter that's 12 inches or so off the ground.
I think that's about the maximum that Mr. Kish had done in his research.
Okay. Mrs. Kinney Bodden was asking you about satellite spatter in this particular case. And I think she asked you about, or she put up a diagram, and what that diagram was actually a photo. I may have missed this number. So, nope, I didn't. Sudi, do you have Q to the 9th and Y to the 9th available, maybe? Your Honor, if you'll give me just a quick second. Of course. Okay. No, that's not the one. I apologize, Your Honor. I'm trying to keep us from remarking things that have already been marked.
Okay.
Let's start with this diagram, and then we'll move on while Ms. Sahab looks for the other two diagrams. Take a look toward the left, actually. I'm not concerned with the right-hand photograph B on People's 103 at this time. I'm more concerned with what's in the left photograph, and specifically on the right arm of the chair. And when we say right and left of the chair, can we agree, Mr. James, that we're talking about as you're sitting in the chair, the right is to your right hand and the left is to your left?
Yes, we always have to do that, especially when you're talking about a victim lying in bed.
Sure.
Which is, are you looking at the bed, or are you from the person's perspective? Right. Fine.
If we did what we asked is to the far left of the arm of the chair. Right? I'm sorry, there. And tell me, is that the area that you were talking about when you said there was a parent stain and what you said could be satellite spatter from that parent stain?
Yes, it's on the upholstery of the arm of that right side.
Okay, about where my green laser pointer is right now?
Yeah, roughly in there, yes.
Okay. Birthday present. Let's take a look at, I think it's, is that Q or Y to the 9th, Sudi? Let's put it up and take a shot. I believe, and Jen, maybe you can tell me if I'm getting this wrong, I think that's Q to the 9th. Thank you. Take a look at what's been previously marked as Q to the 9th and tell me, is that a closer view of that parent stain and then some of the smaller stains surrounding that as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so on this chair, so that we're all oriented, as I'm saying, can you see where you are?
Yes, I can.
I don't know if the jurors can see, but on this chair, if this represents the arm, that stain would be toward the inside of the right arm of the cushion of the chair, correct?
Well, it extends from about, looks from this photograph from about the center over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a look back at People's 103 one more time to make sure that we're looking at the same thing. You can't sanction that. No, that's it. That's the stain there, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and if you look at it from this perspective, which is basically straight on the chair, I see what your point is. You're saying that there's some staining toward the center midline of the arm, and that it droops over toward the inside of the chair, correct?
Yes, that's what it appears to do.
Okay, so basically it might be from midline toward the inside, certainly favoring the interior of the chair rather than the exterior of the chair.
Yes.
Okay. Is that the parent and satellite spatter that you are suggesting, or let me ask it a different way, Mr. James, it's far easier. Are you suggesting, or is it your testimony that it's that staining that was the mechanism for the pattern of blood that you saw on the left breast and other areas of Mr. Spector's white jacket?
I'm saying it was an alternative mechanism, and Mr. Kish and I talked about that a lot in preparation of this report that we actually submitted, and that we simply couldn't rule it out, and we weren't ruling out impact spatter, by doing that.
Okay, you were not ruling out impact spatter.
Right. It was another mechanism to be considered as a post-injury type of activity that can account for small spatters of blood.
Okay. Can we take a look at People's 61? I'm going to ask you to take a look at a couple of photographs. What's been previously marked as People's 61. And I'll ask you a couple of questions about those. This is what's been previously marked as People's 61, and it may be a little bit difficult to see, Mr. James. I want to direct your attention first to the area where Ms. Clarkson appears to be in the chair. She's slumped sort of backward. Her head is to the left in this photograph, and her right arm toward the armpit area is draped over the right cushion of the armrest of the chair. Do you see that area?
I do.
Do you also see in photograph B in that same exhibit, People 61, the area of the chair that we've been talking about where the strap of the purse on the interior is drilled over the arm of the chair?
Yes.
Okay. You indicated that in your opinion, having reviewed these photographs, that Ms. Clarkson's head appeared to have been moved from the right, where most of the bleeding occurred, at the scene toward the left, correct?
Yeah, the left is the final position, but there was significant bleeding with her head turned to the right.
Okay. I want you, Mr. James, for the purposes of these questions, my next couple of questions, to put in your mind Ms. Clarkson's head back on her right side toward the right shoulder. Assuming what you saw, taking into consideration what you saw as the flow of blood down the right shoulder, onto the arm, down to the purse, onto the strap of the purse, and then down into the purse, filling the purse, beneath the purse, dripping into the carpet. Right? That basically describes the general flow that you saw based on all the photographs that you reviewed.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't think that's controversial.
Okay. Now, taking that into consideration, do you have a conclusion, Mr. James, about where that stain emanated from, the stain toward the inside of the right armrest, if you will? I keep struggling with that word. I know there's a word for it. The inside of that armrest, where was the source of that blood, if in fact there was a apparent stain where something was dripping into it?
Well, dripping into it is the usual way that occurs. But in a situation like this, you've got significant bleeding on the right side. Blood is flowing down, and that flow on its own can create satellite spatter. So it's blood coming from the nose and mouth area, coming down the right side of the body, that has created that.
Okay. So you will agree with me that the most consistent, the most reasonable explanation for the blood on this inside portion of the right armrest is the flow from her face down onto her shoulder, onto her arm and jacket, down onto the strap of the purse, flowing onto to that armrest and then on down wherever it went.
Yes, and you can even see individual drops on the side of the, if you look back at that other photo, you can see a nice acid stain that's right on the inside edge of that as well. So
Okay.
that's pretty much what I think. Yes.
Sure. That having been said, Mr. James, there is in that scenario, nothing where at a height of 6 inches or higher, blood dripping into blood onto the armrest, correct?
We didn't imply,
That's not what you're suggesting?
no.
Okay, you're simply suggesting there was a blood flow there, correct?
There was a blood flow associated with the production of that satellite spatter. We're not saying that someone or an object was dripping blood directly above that. You know, our feeling is that it came from the blood flow on that side of the body.
Okay, explain that. I may be a little bit dense on this issue, so I want you to explain how blood flow, if you just explain how satellite spatter requires a height of 6 inches or higher, blood dripping to create the energy, basically to create the satellite spatter. Can I have Okay, let me restart my question again. I'm not sure I'm following your explanation, Mr. James. If in fact the explanation for satellite spatter is that blood needs to gain enough energy in the air, dropping down and dripping into other blood or onto a surface to create this spatter, how is it that flowing blood, simply flowing from the shoulder down to the strap and onto the armchair, will create that same type of spatter?
Well, this is the best example of showing satellite spatter. However, and we've seen this in other cases, that rapidly flowing blood coming down, you know, on the surface of the body, maybe it's best described as more of a turbulent effect, but you're still getting satellite spatter. You can get satellite spatter from projected blood, large volumes as well. There's different mechanisms. All satellite spatter is an accumulation of bloodstains around the parent area. That's the best example to use, but, you know, for lack of a better term, the turbulence of blood flowing down, it's almost like, you know, not exactly like wind blowing, you know, on an ocean wave, but you can get turbulence from the blood flow that's going to cause a few spatters to fall off.
But of course, if Ms. Clarkson was bleeding and the flow of gravity down the shoulder could suggest that.
I'm not talking about a propelled flow at that point, and maybe you misunderstood me. I mean, I've actually seen, you know, videotapes, not to be shown here, but of individual, actually it wasn't an intraoral gunshot wound. It was on television about 15 years ago, involving a politician or a comptroller that killed himself at a news conference, of all things. But anyway, that blood came out very rapidly, okay?
Right.
And it was due to his final bleeding episode. It had nothing to do with wind or anything else like that, but it was just the rapid reduction of blood pressure coming out of his mouth. So that's the kind of thing I'm referring to.
And in your book, whereas you have an example to show us for blood dripping into blood, did you draw this, by the way?
No, that was done by an associate of mine from Malta, as a matter of fact.
Very nice.
He's an architect.
Nicely, I tried to explain that.
Many of the diagrams in the book are the result of his work. Nice contribution.
All right. Did you include in your book any diagram of the flowing mechanism creating satellite spatter like this?
I don't believe we did, no.
Okay.
We may not have had a decent photograph of it or something, but...
All right. Now that having been said, let's go back to the chair. That having been explained, the other explanation for that spatter on the chair in this area, toward the inside of the chair, thank you, Sudi, toward the inside of the chair, for instance, there, and there. What I've just done, Your Honor, is defense I want to say that's Q to the 9th. I've just indicated toward the left side of the picture several small stains that appear to be blood stains on the arm of the chair. Those are also consistent with, Mr. James, spatter from the actual impact, or impact spatter from the actual gunshot, I should say.
Yes, they're in the size range, but I'm not eliminating satellite spatter for their production, and I think that's pretty clear in the report.
Sure, and conversely, I'm going to ask you to say that the opposite way.
Sure.
You're certainly not eliminating that could be impact spatter from the gunshot wound itself.
No.
Okay. I want to talk real quick about the position of Ms. Clarkson at the time she was shot. You indicated that.
Yeah, I'm kind of amazed at how much he hasn't changed. I expected to see a big, not a big change, but a bigger change, like a maturity. He's the same as he always has been. Like, I had one of my mom's friends was a nurse, and she told me that nurses are born, not made. Like, you either have it or you don't. And I think that might be true of lawyers too, because like he just has it. Like, I expected there to be like, awkward moments, and like where he would grow into his confidence and grow into like his mannerisms and the way he did things and said things. And no, he's the same now as he was back then. I was very surprised to realize that.
Under questioning by Mrs. Kinney Bodden, that you were not comfortable saying that there was a particular position of Ms. Clarkson's head at the time that the gunshot was inflicted, correct?
Yes, not based upon any type of analysis of the stains on the slip. I just don't think it can be done precisely.
Okay.
And I think I left it at, we know for a fact the initial bleeding occurred when her head was to the right.
Okay. You actually indicated in your report that certain observations that you made about how she was situated in the chair and the blood evidence that was on the chair and the slip and the purse and the dress and her jacket, etc., correct?
Yes.
You also, well, let me ask it this way. You can eliminate a couple of things, I'm assuming, from your review of the evidence. For instance, you can eliminate that her head was turned 90 degrees to her left and looking over her left shoulder when she was shot. I'm assuming you can eliminate that reasonably.
I think that's reasonable, yes.
Okay. You could probably also eliminate that her head was turned 90 degrees to her right and looking straight over her right shoulder when she was shot.
Yes, that's also reasonable.
Okay. What you're saying is you can't tell us or tell the jurors that she was looking directly forward or 10 degrees to the right or 30 degrees to the right. That's the precision with which you say you are uncomfortable, correct?
Yeah, I just don't think you can do it based on the surface upon which the bloodstains are that you would use for that determination.
Okay. In your report, you did indicate that bloodstains were present on the right arm of the chair, correct?
Yes.
The right chest region of her blazer, correct?
Yes.
The purse, correct?
Yes.
And the purse was on which side?
Purse was on the right side.
You indicated that there was blood on the arm, the arm of the chair itself, correct?
Correct.
Which arm of the chair, Mr. James?
The right.
You indicated that there was blood and some spatter possibly on the armchair, the arm support, if you will, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
And which arm support?
The right. Yeah.
And you indicated that there was spatter that you saw on the cushion as well, the cushion area of the chair, correct?
Yes.
Which side, the left or the right?
Well, there is virtually little, if any, blood on the left side, so we're talking about the right side of the chair.
So once again, the right side.
Yes.
All right. So basically, all of the blood that you encountered during the course of your investigation and looking at all the evidence was toward, if you placed the midline at Lana Clarkson's nose. It was sort of including some on the midline, sort of to the right of center, correct?
Yes.
All right. So as a criminalist, if one was asked, in your professional opinion, could you render a conclusion based on all of the totality of the evidence there and the totality of the pattern that was seen as to whether Ms. Clarkson's head was situated more toward the right than the left? Would you be comfortable saying, yes, based on the totality of the evidence, it would be reasonable to conclude that it was more toward the right than the left?
Yes, because there's an absence of blood on the left chair, side of the chair. I agree with that, and I think Lynn Harrell was correct in that evaluation.
Okay.
However, to get any more precise, I would probably just stick with the fact that we know the initial bleeding occurred with her head to the right.
Sure.
Without knowing whether it was 10 degrees over,
right,
or what have you, up to 45, I suppose, or 90.
Sure. Yeah. But may I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Very briefly, you indicated, I won't invade your space.
That's fine.
Certainly, if Dr. Harold suggested under questioning by myself and cross-examination that in her expert opinion, the head would have been more to the right of center, you wouldn't necessarily have any, quarrel with that opinion.
Only to the extent that, with the fact that she stains on the slip to make that determination.
What if she used the totality of the circumstances of all of the blood pattern that she saw at the crime scene? That would be more appropriate.
Not exactly what totality you're talking about.
The slip, the chair, the stuff that we've just talked about, the bloodstains on the right arm, the bloodstains on the right support, the bloodstains on the right cushion, the absence of bloodstains on the left cushion, the bloodstains toward the right chest area of the slip dress, the bloodstains on the purse, and the fact that the head fell to the right. All of that stuff taken together. If that was presented to you, you would probably feel comfortable saying, well, based on all of that, the head was probably to the right of center at the time of at the infliction of the gunshot.
Not necessarily.
Didn't you say, well, as a matter of fact, you reached some conclusions in your report, correct?
Yes.
All right. In your conclusions, did you say that the bloodstain patterns on Lana Clarkson are consistent with her head being turned to her right while bleeding down over her right side of her body, purse, and the chair? Okay. You also went on to say that Lana Clarkson's head was subsequently moved from leaning right to leaning left, correct?
Correct.
Finally ending up in the position depicted by the scene photographs, correct?
Correct.
Then you indicated in your second conclusion, there is no indication that Lana Clarkson was in any other location than on the chair during and or after her gunshot wound occurred. So in other words, she was found, or she bled with her head to the right, correct?
Correct.
The initial bleeding process was head to the right, correct?
Yes.
And she was found slumped in the chair with her legs extended, correct?
Yes.
Her head was behind the armrest of the right armrest of the chair. If we dissected the chair, for instance, it would be behind it.
Yes.
And you indicated in your second conclusion, there's no, and by the way, she was found initially, it was determined that her initial bleeding was all to the right, correct?
Yes, I agree with that.
All right.
Bleeding, post-injury bleeding, yes.
That being said, you indicated there's no indication that she was in any other position than that at the time of the discharge of the weapon, correct?
Meaning in the chair. Yes.
Okay. So you weren't saying that her head was basically to the right or the right of center when you made that conclusion?
No.
All right.
We're talking about the shooting incident occurred while she was in the chair.
Okay.
And I don't think that's under dispute.
All right.
And the other thing was, the reason I didn't agree with the two statements ago or questions you asked me was that, Lynn Harrell didn't consider other mechanisms, and that's what's holding me back in drawing that conclusion, in addition to the nature of the surface on the slip.
Okay. We'll get to that in just a second. The other mechanism being the satellite spatter.
Correct.
All right.
Actually, we'll get to that in 15 minutes.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
We're going to take our recess. Keep in mind the admonition, 15 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Okay, we are still not done with his testimony, but let's go ahead and stop there. Where'd my pen go? I had a pen. I don't understand. I don't understand how the blood droplets and the blood stains, how does that help them figure out whether he did it or she did it to herself? Because of where the blood droplets are. Because if he is right on top of her with the pew pew in her mouth, or if she's got it in her own mouth, aren't the blood droplets and everything going to be the same generally? How is that going to help? You see what I'm saying? Like, how? I'm confused. Is this just it? What's the equivalent of semantics when it's not words, but it's just minutia? Like, you understand what I mean? Like, am I being nitpicky, or I don't understand how where satellite stains and all is going to prove that he did it versus she did it, It just, hello, is this thing on? You guys aren't talking to me. Or am I just being stupid? I don't understand. Okay, well, okay. We will go over to Karen Reed now. Thank you guys for coming out. If you're not going to be with us for Karen Reed, thank you for being here. We will do Phil Spector some more tomorrow morning. Hopefully we will get done with this witness tomorrow and maybe start on another one. And thank you, Judy. I just don't understand though, because see, like if it's foundational, like they have to lay a foundation to ask other questions later. But if it's a gunshot from across the room versus someone doing it to themselves, that I would understand. But if it's in the mouth, they're got to be right up next to him, right? So how is the pattern of the blood spatter? I did not say splatter. I said spatter. I'm a true crime fan. I know how to say it. I need more coffee. I don't see the difference. How big of a difference is it going to be where the blood falls? So, anyway. Okay, so we're going to Karen Reed. If you were not joining us, join it. Good Lord, I cannot talk today. If you're not joining us for Karen Reed, goodbye. I will see you tomorrow. If not, you will portal over to Karen Reed. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go get more coffee. Maybe going to order a new tongue from Amazon so I can talk. Maybe a set of dentures. I don't know. A linguistics course, something. I don't know why I can't talk this morning. Okay. Be kind to people. Love your family. Jesus loves you, and so do I. Bye, my friends. I will see you at Karen Reed or in the morning for Phil Spector.